In the news, His Majesty the King receives the chair and members of the Privatization Evaluation Committee after handing a report of their findings to the Prime Minister and urges the government to make use of lessons learned. Ballot counting is underway in Turkey's local elections, and early results put Prime Minister Erdogan's ruling party ahead with nearly 48% of the vote. And U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov begin talks in Paris on the framework of a deal to defuse the crisis in Ukraine. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty the King and Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani held talks here in Amman on Jordanian-Qatari ties and ways to cement relations in various fields. The King and Sheikh Tamim also reviewed ongoing developments in the region and were in agreement on further strengthening their brotherly relations in the interest of pan-Arab issues and causes. During the talks held over a working lunch and attended by senior officials from both sides, the two leaders also agreed to maintain close consultation and coordination on various bilateral, Arab and regional issues. Sheikh Tamim left Jordan today following the talks. King Abdullah led senior officials at an airport ceremony to bid farewell to the Qatari Emir. Separately, His Majesty received the chair and members of the Privatization Evaluation Committee in the presence of the Prime Minister. King Abdullah thanked the committee for the report they have prepared on their findings, which His Majesty said reflects Jordan's commitment to transparency. The report was earlier handed to Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour, coinciding with His Majesty's letter to the government yesterday, directing Mansour and his team to prepare a vision for Jordan's economy over the next 10 years. His Majesty urged the government to analyze and make use of the findings of the report in formulating future economic strategies. The Privatization Evaluation Committee was formed last year. It is chaired by Omar Razaz and comprises the membership of Jordanian and international experts in socio-economic policies. The evaluation aimed to study the socio-economic impact of privatized institutions based on documented data to benefit from past mistakes and remedy the situation based on lessons learned. Palestinians and Arab Israelis commemorated the 38th anniversary of Land Day with rallies. Land Day commemorates the killing of 6 Arab citizens by Israeli security forces during protests in 1976 over government land confiscations in Israel's Galilee region. In the northern Israeli town of Araba, more than 1,000 people turned out for the main demonstration, all waving the Palestinian flag. A smaller gathering also took place in the Bedouin village of Sawawil in the southern Negev desert. In occupied East Jerusalem, demonstrators gathered outside the walls of the old city by Damascus Gate, chanting anti-Israeli slogans. Scuffles broke out when occupation forces dispersed the crowd and arrested at least 1 person. There were also several gatherings in the Gaza Strip, including one near the town of Jabalia, in Khan Yunis, and in Beit Hanun.
This is the Land Day celebration, the Land Day protest, where the Arab Palestinian community every year at the 30th of March remember the first Land Day in 76, when Arabs, for the first time in their history, the Arabs, the Israeli that have Israeli citizenship, have went in a general strike to defend.
Meanwhile, on the streets of Cairo, security forces clashed with Muslim Brotherhood supporters demonstrating at the campus of Al-Azhar University, a common site of unrest in recent months. The protesters demanded the reinstatement of students who were expelled for taking part in demonstrations or belonging to the Muslim Brotherhood. The protesters also voiced opposition to the bid for the presidency by former Defense Minister Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Police used tear gas and buckshot to disperse the crowd after they attempted to block traffic in the main street outside the university before retreating inside its gates. There were reports of 1 student killed in the clashes. Ballot counting in Turkey's local elections is underway after polls closed peacefully in most parts of the country. Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan said the contested local elections would affirm his legitimacy as he battles graft allegations and security leaks that he blames on traitors within the Turkish state. Preliminary results, according to Turkish media, show the ruling Justice and Development Party AKP advancing. After 18% of ballots counted, the AKP got nearly 49% of the vote. Here's more.
Millions of Turkish citizens were on the move to vote in one of the most important local municipal elections in Turkish history. Confronted by a series of revelations involving corruption, the elections are widely seen as a referendum on the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan's tumultuous rule of more than a decade. Turkish President Abdullah Gül, along with Erdogan and leader of the main opposition Republican Party's party, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, cast their votes in the country's local polls.
The electoral campaigns have been tough, but I want Turkish people to remember that our state is strong. State institutions are also strong. The problems we face will be resolved within a legal framework.
Devletimizin bütün kurumları da güçlüdür.
Erdogan and his ruling Justice and Development Party image has been rocked by a corruption scandal with a series of leaked tapes. But the Prime Minister has been suggesting that the election will let the people decide if the tapes are significant.
Despite all the undesired statements at rallies, today people will tell the truth and it will be beyond everything. People's words will be decisive rather than those who spoke at rallies. For me, people will make the final call and we respect people's decision.
Turkey's main opposition party, the Republic People's Party, tried to make sure the graft probe remains at the center of the election process.
Listen to your conscience and vote accordingly. I hope we'll do that. I am happy. I cast my vote. Democracy in Turkey should be strengthened. It should be renewed. We will build it from the start. I trust my people. I trust their judgment. I hope the outcome will be good.
Elsewhere, 8 people were killed in isolated clashes during the municipal elections. Security officials said 6 people were killed in a gunfight between 2 families in the village of Yovecik, which borders Syria. In Hatay province, also bordering Syria, 2 people died in a gun battle between relatives of the 2 candidates in the Golbashi village. But the voting went ahead peacefully in most parts of the country. Polling stations for Turkey's local election are closing, and official results are expected to start being announced later tonight. Luay Balkar for the news at 10.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry began talks in Paris with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on the framework of a deal to reduce tensions in Ukraine. Kerry held talks first with French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius before heading to meet Lavrov. The meeting late this afternoon at the residence of Russia's ambassador to France aims to end confrontations between Russia and the West following Moscow's annexation of Crimea region. Ideas on the table include the deployment of international monitors in Ukraine, the withdrawal of Russian forces from Crimea and the border zone around Ukraine, and the launch of direct talks between Moscow and the government in Kiev. Russian officials have repeatedly stated that Moscow has no intentions beyond Crimea. Commenting on the statements, a spokeswoman for EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton said Europe expects to see words translated into deeds, including the military buildup at the regions bordering Ukraine. 10 ships and 9 aircraft have been searching a massive area in the Indian Ocean west of Perth, trying again to find some trace of the missing Malaysian aircraft. The jetliner went missing more than 3 weeks ago and is presumed to have crashed in one of the most remote areas of the planet. The search has involved unprecedented cooperation between more than 24 countries. An Australian Navy ship, the Ocean Shield, was fitted with a sophisticated U.S. black box locator and an underwater drone and was expected to leave port and join the search today. Here are the details.
Is huge, roughly the size of Poland, and time is running out. The flight recorder's batteries that transmit the signal are expected to die in about a week.
The U.S. naval officer told journalists the search for missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 could take years, considering the little information available on where it crashed. Cities across the world switched off their lights to mark this year's Earth Hour movement. World landmarks including Sydney Opera House, the famous Taipei 101 Tower in Taiwan, including landmarks in Singapore, Tokyo and Beijing, all switched off the lights. And in Europe, London's iconic Big Ben and Westminster Palace, the Eiffel Tower in Paris, Milan's Sforza Castle, Madrid's Almudena Cathedral and Berlin's Brandenburg Gate were among some of the iconic landmarks that dimmed their lights. Elsewhere, the Empire State Building in New York City, Moscow's Red Square and landmarks in Dubai, such as the Burj Al Arab, also marked Earth Hour, the world's largest environmental action on climate change. The 18th International Air and Space Fair, the largest of its kind in Latin America, came to a close in Santiago, Chile, in what was reportedly even the largest since the fair was established in 1980. Some 580 aerospace and defense technology companies from 43 countries and regions displayed their latest products. The world's largest passenger airliner, Airbus A380, made an appearance at the fair, showing visitors its unusually large size. But among all the activities staged during the event, aerobatics was the most well-received for visitors. This year, pilots from Argentina drew an arrow through the heart with the smoke trails coming out of their aircraft. We begin with the Malaysian Grand Prix in Sepang that saw Lewis Hamilton win the title with a pole-to-flag victory. The Briton led every lap of the race.
Okay, Felipe, Valtteri's got better tires. We need to let him go. Do not hold him up.
Kenya's Leonard Common won the 34th Berlin Half Marathon, just beating compatriot Abraham Sheroben in a sprint finish. Common finished in a time of 59 minutes and 14 seconds, the fastest ever debut half marathon. Kenyans Abraham Sheroben and Richard Mingeh finished second and third, respectively. And in the women's race, Ethiopian Tadlek Bekel won first place, clocking a time of 70 minutes, 0.05 seconds. She finished just 8 seconds ahead of Kenya's Agnes Mutun. Germany's Sabrina Mockenhaupt claimed third. And finally, cold and partly cloudy weather continues tonight with northwesterly moderate to brisk winds. Tomorrow, a slight rise in temperature is expected, creating moderate weather in most regions and warm in the Jordan Valley with southeasterly moderate winds. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect fair conditions tonight but warm tomorrow with northerly moderate to fresh winds and slightly choppy seas. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty the King receives the chair and members of the Privatization Evaluation Committee after handing a report of their findings to the Prime Minister and urges the government to make use of lessons learned. Ballot counting is underway in Turkey's local elections, and early results put Prime Minister Erdogan's ruling party ahead with nearly 48% of the vote. And U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov begin talks in Paris on the framework of a deal to defuse the crisis in Ukraine. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Khan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.